What's up, guys? It's Justin again with another video. Today we're going to be painting two of our Monster Hunter miniatures. These are some of the core box alternate sculpts. These are the Sword and Shield Hunter and the Dual Blade Hunter in leather armor. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've laid out a bunch of colors here. I've got, these are all pro acryl right now. We've got burnt sienna, beige red, shadows flesh, dark flesh, tan flesh, yellow ochre, dark and light umber, dark golden brown, ivory, warm brown, burnt orange, and mahogany. I really just wanted to get a series of browns down. And then we've got ivory for the pants. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know which colors these are. I think this might be dark golden brown. I'm going to go ahead and base coat the pants in this color. And the reason for that is I don't want to jump straight to that ivory. I want to kind of work my way up towards it. So we're going to start with this, and then we'll start adding more ivory into our mix to kind of bring us up there. Alright, so we're going to be jumping back and forth between the minis here just so I can show them both off. The sculpts are a little different because it's a male and female, so you get both versions of that armor. So what we've done now is we've gone ahead and mixed just the tiniest little bit of ivory into that brown, and we're just going to kind of keep pushing that a little bit. Now I want to kind of nurture this color up a little bit. If you want to, this is a good opportunity to start kind of like layering in your or working your blends and stuff like that, and making sure that your shadows and stuff are in a good spot. But for these first couple steps, I think I'm just gonna kind of blast over everything. I'm just gonna nurture that color up. So that just means more and more layers, keeping them nice and thin, nice and smooth, and we will be back with the next one. Alright, and it's shade time. So we're going to go ahead and take a dark brown wash. And if I'm being completely honest here, I'm not the most in love with these Pro Acryl washes. I think the black is nice. But I think, and maybe it's just me using the wrong color at the wrong time, but this, like on the palette, looks really dark, and it's just not quite covering the way that I hoped that it would. Maybe I'm just not using them right. I don't know. This actually here on the back looks a little better than here on the front, and I just think that might be maybe there's like more definition on the back where there's a little more room. But I haven't quite got the hang of how to use these yet, so I'm gonna keep messing with them, and eventually I'm sure I'll figure it out. But I feel like I could almost go for a black wash here and get closer to the result I'm expecting, I guess. But again, I might just be using these washes the wrong way. They feel a little bit thicker than typical washes I use, and they feel almost like a little bit more of like a gel or something. They seem like they almost sit on the surface a little bit longer. They take a little bit longer to dry, I guess. But that's what we're going to do there. So from here, we want to jump into, I think, we're going to grab like the knee pads. So the knee pads are like a kind of warm brown. I just put all these paints on the palette. I don't know which one's which. So I'm just going to grab, I'm using some reference images from the Monster Hunter wiki. And I'm just going to grab what looks right. So I don't know what colors exactly I'm grabbing. I'm hoping that if I tell you it's a color, it's the right color. Immediately I would guess warm brown, but the warm brown in the bottle looks a little bit more red. So this might be light umber, I think. Yeah. And we're just going to paint that kind of on the knee pads here. Now if you go outside, that's fine, you know, just make sure that, you know, before you go back, you tidy things up. There we go. let that dry, or we'll probably move on to something else while everything else dries. So we'll be back in just a second. Alright, so we're going to go warm brown, and we're basically just going to paint the entire boot. I think, because there's like a dark color, I haven't put any extra colors. I basically just filled my palette with browns and some skin tones, because that's mostly what I was prepared to work with like immediately. But we're going to basically just paint all the boot except for the strapping detail in that warm brown color, and then we'll come back and do the straps later in their own color. If you get a little paint on them, it's not a big deal. Definitely not the end of the world. But one thing that you do want to make sure of, if you're painting this specific mini, a lot of the female hunters aren't wearing pants, they're wearing skirts, so their legs are out. Just make sure that, unless you're painting them with leggings or whatever on purpose, make sure that you don't paint their legs by accident. Okay, so we did the warm brown, I think. That might have been mahogany, now that I'm like looking at the colors. But we're going to take another kind of lighter tone, and we're going to go ahead and paint in the gloves. I also painted in the jacket in that last step. I didn't realize it until I was looking back trying to figure out what to paint next at my reference. I realized the coat was the same color as the boots. So we're going to grab just these little leather segments on the arms here. I really like the way these colors are working together, and it's like lots of little different brown tones. Now, I'm probably going overboard here, and this is probably going to be one of those things where I'm going to teach myself a lesson as I paint through this set of minis, where I don't think I need quite as many brown tones as I've set myself up with here, but you know, that's a lesson I'm going to have to teach myself. So, painted the arms. Let's go ahead and grab this guy. Now, he's a little tricky because his arms are completely like covered, so we're just going to grab what we can see, and we're not going to fuss too much about it. Do something like that. Go ahead and get in there. And then this one's a little bit more exposed, so we can just grab the whole arm. Alright, so the last of our major details are, ooh, that's not even close to the color it looked like before I mixed it, are like a really dark leather color. So I'm going to use dark umber for the rest of the details. So the outer skirt here is going to be like this. This isn't even really a dark enough color. I think I need something. Hold on, let me find a color. Alright, so I went ahead and loaded up some what was it? Black brown. I missed this when I was going through the colors initially. This is much closer to what I want in terms of darkness. So we're just gonna kind of blast over all the black armor. So like the shirt, truthfully the bottom part of the boot that I've already painted, and then the outer skirt is going to be done in this black brown color, and then we're going to wash over all this, and then we're going to fix everything that we don't like, which isn't a lot. So this is great, it just needs to be just a touch darker, and it's a better match than what I was originally going to put down. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all those details, and then we'll come back. Alright, so I'm going to take my own advice here, and I'm going to give everything, with the exception of the tan parts we painted in the literal first step, a black wash. So I'm just going to kind of coat everything head to toe. For her it's going to be a little easy because all I have to do is avoid that underskirt there. But the goal of what I'm trying to do here is I just want to knock some of the saturation back and then hit those recesses, darken everything down a lot. Because I've got everything kind of in the ballpark, but I think we can push this saturation a little bit down and get that lining and stuff taken care of, and then we can just kind of carefully highlight things back up to where we want them. The biggest thing this is going to fix, I think, is going to be that last step we did, the black brown. I think it's going to bring it a lot closer to what we see in the artwork, and it's going to kind of get us where we want to be so that we can kind of just fix everything with highlights and stuff. This will also help unify all of these colors, tone down like the orange a little bit, which I'm already going to fix as well. I do like the warmth of it, I just think it's a little bright. So something like that for her. Make sure you get the backs of those boots. Try not to miss anything. If you do, you can always go back and just kind of hit it again. Not a huge deal. And then for him, he's slightly more difficult in that, well, you don't really have a whole lot more to avoid, but that tan area is going to be much larger on this guy because, you know, he's wearing pants. Let's see, I also went back, if you'll notice, in the original step for that orange, I painted his entire arm orange, and then I realized that he's wearing sleeves, so I went back and painted those in that black brown. I did kind of sneak some of that orange in on the inside where I could reach it, but didn't go too nuts here. So again, bring all that down, tie it all together, use whatever wash you want. If you're using Citadel paints, I think Agrax Earthshade would work wonderfully here, just to kind of put that overall brown hue and tie everything together without like dominating it too much. I do like the black, like I said before, I like the black wash here. I think it's a really, really nice wash, but I haven't had much success with the brown, and I don't think I used the flesh wash yet. And I think most of that has to do with putting the brown over like tones that are too similar. I don't think there's enough depth to the brown wash. I think that's my problem with it. So there we go. Now we've got everything already kind of mixed up, so we're going to take that next step in that adding a little bit of ivory to that. I think it's the golden dark brown, and this is where we're going to start being a little bit more selective. So I'm going to grab like right here, and I'm still going to cover mostly everything. I'm pretty much just going to stay away from like the inside recess here. I'm not going to worry about that, but like there's a couple small folds. These are like tight pants, so I'm not going to grab those. And then there's a fold here. I'm going to grab that fold if I can get this paint to work. I had to go help my wife with something, and I think my paint's dried up a little bit on my palette. There we go. And then I'm just going to kind of sweep around it and just let that dark brown stay where it is. Because we're going to do one final highlight layer, and I want this to kind of be my mid-tone slash kind of shadow-ish color. Not really, but you know, I don't want this brown to be the main color, but I'm okay leaving a tiny bit of it behind. And then for her, we're gonna do what we should have been doing from the beginning. We're just gonna grab the pleats, so just kind of pull that down like that. And if you get it where you don't need it, that's okay, because we're going to be highlighting all this other stuff later. So this is a good phase to do this in, because if we mess up, we're going to be highlighting all that other stuff anyway. It's all sitting over top, so it shouldn't be too difficult to fix. Alright, so there's kind of what the pants look like now, and then that little bit on the skirt. Again, nothing too crazy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take that pure ivory, and it's not bright ivory or anything like that, it's just a regular ivory, And we're going to pick out, for the skirt, we're just going to pick out these pleats one last time. We're going to try and stay as centered as we can because it's just a real small area, so we just want to put that last little bit of highlight in there to help that pop just a little bit. For the pants, however, we're going to take a slightly different approach. I do want to water this down just a little bit extra. I don't want it like a glaze or anything, but I want it a little thinner than normal. And I'm just going to hit anything that faces upwards. So like the back of his leg, where his leg's bent here, we're going to grab like just a little section at the bottom of this. We're going to grab like the whole front of his leg here. And then we're even going to pull that up just a little from the side to kind of create that highlighted effect. We're going to grab the front of his knee here.
Dad?
Yes, my love?
When are you coming to snuggle me?
Very soon.
Okay. Can you join your video?
You kind of already are.
Oh. Okay.
Alright, so, ooh, he fell over. And then we're going to go ahead and grab the rest of that skirt. Alright, so there's what that ivory looks like dried. My washes have now dried as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that ivory and we're going to use it for one last thing. On the front of the boots, there is a line that runs down almost till you hit the toe. We're going to paint that line. And then on the shirts, there is a stripe that runs down the front center. And I believe it's on the quarters, but I don't think you can actually see it on this model, so not a huge deal. On the back, we're going to grab just these little stitches right here, just to give that just a slight little pop of color. For the female hunter, it's going to be pretty much the same. I think her details line up pretty good with this model, so same deal. Grab that little stripe on the front of the boot.
Okay. And
then the strip on the front of the shirt. And then the hatches on the back. Quit moving. Now some extra stuff you could do. I think the shirts have a little trim on the shoulder. Grab that. And we'll go ahead and do the trim around the knee as well. So, something like that. Next, we're gonna go ahead and highlight the trim for the coat, and that's a slightly warmer highlight. So for that, I think we're going to use probably light ochre and then just a little bit of yellow ochre to kind of bring some warmth to it but keep the saturation kind of low. And that's just going to be like around the collar in the where the jacket opens in the front. And then I think I'm also going to do the strap detail on the boots in this color as well. Alright, so we've gone ahead, we've painted all that trim. Everything's looking pretty solid right now. So I grabbed and put a little bit of warm brown on the palette. And I'm pretty much just going to pick out all the straps and extra details that's left in the armor. Now I'm pretty satisfied for the most part with the way the leather and everything looks. I do think I should go in and drop just a couple highlights in here and there. Nothing too over the top or crazy. I don't want to have this looking like there's a bunch of different things going on, or too many different things going on, because too much is going to pull away from the overall look of things. In the reference art, these straps are a darker leather, so I'm going to leave them how they are, but I'm going to use that as an opportunity to paint this little knife holster in that warm brown. So yeah, just leather straps, extra details, whatever you want to pop out in this color, I think it's a good idea. And then I think also, while I've got it here on the palette, I'm going to grab some of that yellow ochre. I'm going to mix a little bit of this warm brown into it, and I'm going to use that as like my secondary kind of tone for other pieces. So like this blade intersects with the skinning blade, or the carving blade intersects with all those straps, so we're just going to make that a different leather tone. Now from here, I'm going to probably wash in a different color. I might bust out some GW paint for this, just so that I can wash these straps down and not have them blend in too heavily with what I've got already done here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this on all these models, and then we'll go ahead and get into some of these final details, because we're closing in on it. Alright, so I guess it's time to start painting skin. So we're going to start with what I think is Shadow's flesh, and I'm pretty much just going to base coat all the skin in this. Once I'm done with that, we're going to go ahead and do a layer of wash over top of this, just to kind of get down in those recesses. My guy's looking like Meltman right now. Get down in the recesses, shade everything down, make sure that it looks the way that we want it. Don't forget important details. These are fingerless gloves, so grab those fingies. And then for the lady hunter, we're going to paint her legs. So, I'll be back. Alright, so there's our male hunter and his big bald head. And we're just going to grab this flesh wash, and we're just going to throw it over all of these details. We're going to smooth it out, make sure that it doesn't pull too heavily. But we're not really super worried about like being the most cautious either, because this is all going to get one more layer of that Shadow's flesh. I don't know why I'm doing the top of the head, but we're going to do it just for the sake of consistency, I guess. Grab the fingers. It's going to give you that little bit of separation between each of the fingers. And then this is going to give you a little something to kind of work with. With the female hunter, we've got just a tiny bit of additional skin to paint with the legs, but less face, which I think is a good thing. Gives us a little bit more to kind of frame, and it should be easier to actually paint her face without any like extra work. And the big difference between this wash and the brown wash is this is much warmer, and it's much richer. It's got more of a reddish, I guess, kind of tint to it than the standard brown wash, where that one is much more of a muted brown. There's not a whole lot to it. This has got like an orangey red kind of quality to it, where it kind of livens up the skin tone a little bit. So there's our wash applied. We're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna come in with another layer of shadow flesh. Alright, so while we're waiting on that wash to dry, we can go ahead and start highlighting some of this leather. So what I've done is I'm just going to mix a little bit of that ivory into a bunch of these tones or whatever, and start grabbing some high points, picking out some of the details like the tops of these pockets here. I'm afraid I'm probably going to screw all this up when I start doing it, so we're not going to be like super heavy on these details, but I do want to pick out a few spots, tops of the shoes, anything that's like super like upwards facing, but also anything that's like buried, so like the top of this little pouch on the back, the tops of the shoulders, stuff like that. And I'm just going to work my way around these tones and start incorporating, like I said, just a little bit of that ivory into those base colors. And you don't have to do this. I'm just doing it so that, well, first of all, I'm not sitting around here waiting for paint to dry, but I'm adding a little bit of extra life to some of these areas that are a little bit more boring. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back when I'm done. Alright, so we're going to go back to this Shadow's Flesh, and we're going to treat it kind of like a highlight on some areas. So like on the leg here, we're literally just going to get the top of the leg. Nothing too crazy. You can bring it down the side some, but I'm going to leave anything that's like underneath or on the back that's not facing upwards. I'm just going to leave it alone. That's going to be like our shadow, and this is sort of going to be our mid-tone, sort of. For the face, I'm pretty much just going to paint everything but like the inside of the lips. I'm going to try and dodge like the edges, so anywhere that like it meets with other fabrics and stuff. Just going to grab that like that, grab that lip, grab the nose, the chin. And it's going to look real janky for a little bit, but once we start like adding some extra details and highlighting this and all that other stuff, this will look much better. For him, we're going to follow pretty much the same principles for the face. You can be more selective if you want to be, so grab the nose, grab the cheeks, lips, chin, cheeks, sides of the ear, and then we're going to paint the whole top of his head. That one is kind of a given. I assume he's bald. It doesn't have any like sculpted detail for his hair, so we're just going to assume that he's a bald man. So something like that. Again, you don't have to go too crazy at this step. You just want to kind of bring that color back and make sure that it's nice and reinforced and, even. From here, I'm actually going to reload this color onto my palette. It is bedtime where I am, so in the break where we put the kids to bed, a couple of my paints started to dry up a little bit, so we want nice smooth paints. So we're going to load up some beige red. This is going to be kind of an intermediary for me. Again, we're just going to pick out the top sections of like the leg here, and this one we're not going to go down as far. For this part, we're just going to grab like this first teeny little bit, and then for the face, we're also just going to try to get in there, make these details sing a little bit. So chin, what of the cheeks we can grab. Nose, forehead, and that should be pretty good for that. I might go in off camera and just tidy that up a little bit, but that's the idea, so I'll be back. Alright, and finally we're going to go ahead and grab some olive flesh, and we're just going to kind of do our most extreme highlights with this. You might want to thin it down a little bit extra just so that it blends a little smoother when it dries, but you know, however you want to do it. Also, I said that painting her face was going to be easier, and I was wrong. So for that last highlight, we're just going to grab the most important stuff. So, bridge of the nose, tiny bit of the forehead, just pick out the cheeks. My brush split there, and then the chin. I did not pick out the fingers in a single step of this, so we're going to go ahead and grab those right now. The fingers aren't as big of a deal in my opinion. They aren't really a focal point. I think as long as you paint them the right color, they'll be fine. Alright, and that's going to be her kind of skin finished off. For the guy, again the same process. He was so much easier to paint. We're just going to grab some of those little details here and the top of his head. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I can do this now because we don't really have anything, I guess, stopping us. I'm going to open up a new color here. I'm going to use blue-black. And this is going to be one of those, we have to do it real quick and then we can leave it alone because it has to dry steps. You can use a pure black if you want. I'm just going to use blue black because it's going to be nice and dark, but not, you know, completely black. Oh boy. Turn that down into like a wash. You want it very thin. And I'm going to just run this. I'm just going to touch the eyes with it. And what this is going to do is provide us kind of a frame for the eyes. So we'll be able to paint inside of that and we'll have something that kind of lines those details for us. I like to turn my mini sideways and kind of poke at it from like a 45-degree angle. I think it helps with stability and all that. So some of the things we can do while we're waiting, we're going to start painting her hair. So for that I'm going to use, I think it's mahogany, so just a nice rich red brown. She's going to be a redhead, so this is a mini for my wife. So she likes all the minis that she's going to use to look like her. So, red hair. And then we'll let that dry and we'll start highlighting it. Another thing we can do at this stage, sorry if I'm going off camera here. I just want to make sure I get all the details. There's some other little things that need paint. Obviously the weapons haven't been painted. We haven't done any metallic work. I like to save metallic work till the end. But we are kind of nearing that point. We also need to pick out the goggles. So where her hair is going to be red, I think I'm going to do the goggles on both of these a dark color, so we can jump back to that black brown, and we can just paint the strap or whatever around the goggles in that color. You can also paint the lenses if you want, because you're going to paint over them, and they are recessed details, so you're going to be painting into them. That should make things a little bit easier. But we wanted to save this until after we'd painted all the skin, especially on this guy. And then for her, we're just gonna kind of pop that in those. Now, the eyes are pretty much dry now. It doesn't take very long. So what we can do is we can take, you can use a white if you want to. I don't recommend it. It's a little too much. So I'm going to take ivory. I'm just going to put like the tiniest drop on the palette. You really don't need that much. These are super tiny. So unless you're painting all of the eyes on all the minis all at the same time, you don't need much. We want a nice fine tip on the brush. And what we want to do is just get inside that area we painted with that almost black and just dot it. Now I don't know how well that's going to show up on camera. I hope well. But I don't think we're going to push the eyes much further than that. Because I think that we are going to run the risk of having to redo the eyes 8,000 times and do all these extra details and stuff. So just a little dot of white or an off-white. There we go. And that's more than sufficient for my tabletop quality. Another thing that I like to do, I'm going to get a dark red. So this is, we're still in Pro Acryl. We're using burnt red. Again, just the tiniest little dot of that. We're going to put that on the brush so that it's just on the tip of the brush. Throw that on the palette. We're going to grab like a flesh mid-tone. We want significantly more of that, and we want to mix those together to make a very reddy skin tone. And then you want to wash that down a little bit. You don't have to go too crazy here, but you don't want it to be like full strength. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to paint the bottom lip. And then I like to glaze a little bit onto the cheeks, just a little bit. Now what this is going to do is it's going to make it look like a little bit of blush on the cheeks. There's a little bit of life in the face. You could do the nose, you could do knees, things like that. I think as long as you get it on the lips, that's the most important thing, because it's going to really make your lips stand out. The cheeks aren't super necessary, but it can help. So, with that stuff done, let's jump back into this hair, which I've messed up, but that's okay. We're going to take that mahogany, we're going to mix in a little bit of burnt orange, or I am, you paint it whatever color you want. It's going to kind of pull some of the saturation out of the red in that brown, and we're literally just going to highlight it. So we're just going to grab like strands of it, pull it towards the top. at least some of that was on camera. There we go. So, yep, just pop those highlights in. Something like that. Really, the first color, it only exists as a base and to kind of push that secondary color. You could jump straight to this, but you're going to have to probably do a couple layers just to get it up to a decent saturation, and over straight black, I don't think it's going to look the best. So going from a brown is going to help you a lot. Finally, we're going to take that pure burnt orange. We're going to thin it down just a little bit, and we're just going to pick out a couple strands of hair. You don't have to go super crazy here. I'm going to try and focus some of these to the top. Kind of give you like a little ring around the head, I guess. And I'm good with that. So what's next? We've got metallic colors. If I can figure out where I put them. Alright, so I forgot one little detail that I was pretty explicit about not forgetting. That's the glasses. So I'm going to paint the lenses of those in dark purple just to get it started. And then we're going to highlight with a lighter blue. This dark purple reads, to me anyway, it's purple when it's like on the brush and by itself, but on the palette next to the blue I'm going to highlight it with, it reads kind of blue, but this blue also kind of reads like a almost like a lilac purple. It's very light. So there's that, and then we're going to go ahead and just dot in those lenses. Boop. There we go. Now we'll go to the metallics. Alright, so since these are starter weapons, they're actually pretty straightforward. They're going to be very easy to paint. These are going to be painted first in dark silver. If you want to go with another brand, I would recommend maybe mixing in just a tiny bit of a black ink or a little bit of black paint into your silver just to darken it down a little bit and get that nice deep dark finish that you'll probably be looking for the first part of these. And then for this particular weapon, the shield is also kind of one color. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit this all with this color. Then we are going to wash it down even further. That's also going to help us pick out the recesses. And then I think we might do like a light dry brush. We'll see. There's other details I could paint in this dark silver as well, but I think I'm going to save that for the next step when we jump into like a more neutral silver, because I want those details to stand on their own. So there's that, and then the dual blades is basically the exact same weapon for the most part, although I think these ones are slightly less detailed than the sword and shield version. So we're going to kind of ramp up weapons here. This is one of the easier ones, being a starter weapon and also being you know, an ore tree weapon as opposed to a monster weapon. Alright, so we'll be back when we're ready to wash. And I thought, why not? Let's go ahead and just grab those silver details now while the other colors are drying. So what I'm looking for here is the belt buckle. Try not to make a mess. The scout fly holster thing. Various little buckles and chains and whatnot hanging off the character. So there's these little circle deeds. I'm going to do this little side knife here, as well as a little bit of exposed part of this blade. And again, just kind of look around for extra details that might jump out at you, little buckles, buttons, things like that. Alright, instead of washing these down with a traditional wash, I'm going to use some transparent black, and I'm just going to thin it down a bunch, and I'm just going to kind of brush it over everything. And this is behaving a little bit closer to what I'm accustomed to from something like a wash. It's flowing into the recesses, it's kind of doing what I need it to do. You know, and it's not staining super heavy. And you know, most importantly, it is kind of flowing where I want it to. Touch up that little area where I made that mistake earlier. And then we're going to do the same thing with this side. So just pull that down. Make sure you get both sides of the blades. One thing I think that's funny, it's kind of weird about these in particular, is the guild symbol is on the inside of the blade, not on the outside. There we go. So once that dries, we're going to go back in. We're going to re-highlight. For these, we're going to re-highlight like that underneath, like the pommel and the blades. And for this, there's like a casing, so we're going to highlight everything past the casing. And while we're waiting, I thought maybe we'll go ahead and finish the last kind of miscellaneous detail, and that is the scout flies. So on the little scout fly holder here, we're just going to take bright yellow green, we thin that down to like a wash, and we're just going to brush that over the area. Now we can also, I think I'm going to take something that's just a tiny bit darker. I'm also going to thin that down to a glaze, and I'm entering dangerous territory here with any amount of like OSL. I could just leave it how it is, but that's not me. So instead of using bright yellow green, we're going to use a regular yellow green, which is not terribly dark, but it's darker, but it's a similar hue. We're going to thin that down to a glaze, and I want to paint this just kind of around this area. And I think this is not a very white heavy paint, so ooh, that's not good. Hold on, made a little mistake there, so we can easily mop that up a little bit. Let's get a bigger brush, something like this, to clean up that little bit. It definitely ran away on us, but that's okay. So just get that wet brush. As long as you get it quick enough, you should be able to stop it from, you know, getting too far and drying. So create a little bit of that OSL effect. Now the reason we're using the darker color here is because the scout flies themselves are going to be the glow, so we just want a little bit darker green, but the similar hue. So if you've only got one green, you're going to take this green and you're going to glaze everything. Then you're going to add just a tiny bit of yellow. And then you're going to poke it into where the scout flies are. Then you're going to add a little bit more yellow. You're going to poke it in where the scout flies are. And then when you get it nice and bright, you're going to take just a tiny bit of white and just kind of poke it around in the middle. So we're going to take that green, add a little bit of that yellow, get it nice and like neon, thin it down, and that goes just there. Then we're going to take a little bit more yellow, mix that in, and honestly at this point it's basically already almost completely yellow. We're just going to kind of drop that in the center. It's going to be subtle, but you should see it a little bit. And then we're just going to let that dry. So when we come back, well, actually now the weapons are dry enough that we can press on with those. So we're going to take that dark silver again. Make sure you're not just blasting it with a full brush, but just grab those blades. So this section here, this side, and then just that top ridge, just like that. And then remember, this one, it's anything that's under the pommel. We're going to skip these little details here. We want something to be a little dark. And since these blades are 95% blade, we're going to keep the guild symbols and those little notches dark. Okay. Now that our little scout fly dude is almost dry, we're gonna go back to that ivory. We're gonna mix that into our previous mix. That way it still retains a little bit of that yellow, a little bit of that lime, and we're just gonna paint basically a line just kind of here in the middle on both of these. The scout fly is done. There is one other detail I completely missed. We're just gonna grab like a medium brown. We're gonna paint these little ridges on the little launcher here, and then while that's still wet, guess what? Ivory. And we're just gonna drag it along like the back half. And then I'm going to kind of wet blend that in a little bit. So clean off the brush, and then just kind of work that back a little bit. Then we can throw like a flesh wash over that to kind of bring out some definition in that. So once again, paint the whole thing a neutral brown. Ivory, blend, and that should be fine for right this second. So now we're going to go back to the silver, and I'm just going to grab the actual blade. Now there's more you can do with these. I'm actually not the most in love with this. And I don't know if it's the silver paint that I'm using or the fact that everything just kind of looks strong, I guess. But we will think I'll probably throw like a brown wash over everything. And not the actual brown wash, there's a clear brown I'm going to use. Maybe that will kind of pull things where I want them to be. I'm just going to like kind of sloppily highlight the bottom of the shield. I think this would be like real scuffed up and dirty, and then we put that brown wash over it. It should kind of like hide our crimes a little bit. And the dual blades, same deal. Yeah, I think that brown wash is going to be the last step to tie that all together. Give you that weathered look. But I do want to show off like the edges themselves. I think it's kind of definitely one of the staples of Monster Hunter is that like you're constantly managing the sharpness of your weapon. So these blades are definitely sharper. So I will be back with the sharpening stage, or the washing stage. Alright, so I actually mixed the black and the brown wash together, and we're just going to kind of slop that over here a little bit. Might be a little aggressive as far as making it look weathered goes, but what we'll do is we'll wash it on, clean the brush, and then just kind of like stipple it off a little bit to kind of pull some of it away so it's not so aggressive. That didn't quite work how I wanted it to, but I am much happier with that than I was with the wash straight on there. So that actually looks better. There we go. So not too intense. Again, on dual blades, just kind of maybe dab it on, and then real fast. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Alright, I think I can live with that. Now, extra stuff you could do, you could dry brush the weapons to highlight them just a little bit more. You could paint the dots of the eyes. One thing I think I wouldn't mind doing, not that this video hasn't gone on long enough, I'm going to put one little dot on the glasses if I can get my brush tip to cooperate with me. And then I'm ready to call these guys done. There we go. So all that's left really is to base them. I'm going to base probably all the starter hunters the same way, and then I'll base, you know, sets of 4 different ways using different environments from the game, or using different areas from different locations in the game. But that's how you paint your leather armor hunters. There you go, side by side. I'll go ahead and grab some pictures of those and put them at the end of the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and next up we're going to go ahead and handle the chainmail armor. So that should be a little easier, not quite as involved, but we'll see. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you at the next video. Later.